Everyone, welcome to my brand new video on how to spin your seams within an entire block. What I'm going to do today is glue baste each seam for each block within a row together. We're going to stitch them up, and then I'm going to show you how to sew those rows back together to create beautiful nested and spun seams within each intersection of each row for each block. It's going to end up making a beautiful block that is just wonderfully finished. It's going to make it easy to quilt. You'll actually have ditches to quilt for stitching in the ditch. It makes for a really strong quilt to have your seams pressed to the side, nested and spun. And where we have these intersections of half square triangles coming together, it relieves that bulk that people really just don't like and often press their seams open to avoid. But if you nest your seams and spin them, then that bulk is alleviated. So let's go ahead and get started. The first thing I'm going to do is glue baste each block within a row together, or sew them up, and then we'll sew those rows back together to create our spun seams. So let's go. I've got my trusty Elmer's washable school glue with our fine glue tip. This is one of our new glue tips. The ultra fine flex tip. Can't say that 5 times fast. Ultra fine flex tip. These glue tips are manufactured by my mom and stepdad, and they're in their house in Payson, Arizona. We work very hard to bring you good quality products, and this particular glue tip cannot be found anyplace else for this purpose, and it is just a wonderful tip. It is also nice and long and skinny, so you can easily trim it down in 1/16 of an inch increments or smaller in order to get the flow of glue that you prefer. If your hand strength isn't what it used to be, clip it down just a little bit and you'll have that glue coming out in an easier flow for you. So when I start glue basting seams, I usually just start in a row and kind of just keep going and overlapping them. I'm going to go ahead and start up here, and then we'll just kind of go until the end. So I draw a line of glue within the 1/4 of an inch seam allowance, usually right at about 1/8 of an inch. Then put my fabric pieces together, right sides together, line up all the corners and selvages, making sure everything is lined up nice and tidy. Then give it a little heat set. Couple seconds is all you need. Then I fold over this next one and kind of hold it in place, and then I draw my next line of glue, get that next block, turn it over so it's right sides together, get those corners and selvages matched up, and then give it a quick heat set. It's all it needs. It doesn't need more than just a couple of seconds. And with this fine line of glue, and it being so close to the selvage of your block, there is no need to worry about it gumming up your machines. It's getting heat set so it's dry, so it's not going to be gummy. If you were to let it air dry, it would be a little bit gummier. Now when we're nesting these 2 half square triangles, I have them pressed to the side previously, so I can feel right when they nest. It's one of those weird things. I get a little bit of satisfaction from feeling that these 2 seams have nested. So you can see here how the 2 seams have nested, and I can feel them just kind of set right in between each other. And then I'm going to give that a heat set as well. And just keep going down the row. A couple more left. This block here is one of my favorites. It is in the Modern Bee book, and it's called Cordelia's Garden. I'm actually making this block for a bee that I'm in on Instagram for the Modern Insta Bee, and I'm in Hive 1, and this is for one of the gals in our bee named Sarah, and she's doing a Halloween themed quilt, so I chose these great colors that reminded me of Halloween, because I don't have very many novelty prints in my stash, but I thought these colors would be great. And this black and white batik is just one of my favorites. Okay, so I have this whole row glue basted. See how nice and that looks? It's all ready to sew. When you turn it over, you can see how all of the seams are glue basted together. They're not going to go anywhere. I can just set that on my machine and get ready to sew. When I have all 6 of my rows glue basted like this one is, I'll go over to the machine and just do some chain piecing. With everything being glue basted, it makes it really quick, but I can still be accurate. I think that sometimes there's a little bit of a misconception between being quick and not being able to be accurate. And when you do this kind of prep on the front end, you can be quick and accurate. So I'm going to go ahead and keep on going with these things. See, I just made a mistake, if you caught that. And since it's glue basted, it's really easy to fix before I sew it all together. I just took it apart, put a new line of glue, and now it's fixed. We all make mistakes. It's nice when they can be easy ones to fix though. This one gets nest. This one actually doesn't nest because these 2 seams are pressed to the same direction. So when you have something like that that doesn't necessarily nest, then you want to get it as accurate as you can. This is when glue basting really comes in handy. What I usually will do is fold this back and try and get the seams to just lie right on top of each other, one atop another. And once that's done, I heat set it in place. And then the glue will keep this part from shifting. That's that tricky part right here when you have 2 seams that are laying on top of each other rather than nested. But with the glue basting, this part will stay where it is supposed to stay. Alright, all of our rows are glue basted together and ready to sew. They look great. I also like this, doing it this way because right before I sew, visually I can make sure I didn't flip and flop any of the blocks as I was gluing them together, and they look great. It's a little squishy version of what the block will look like when it's all done. So in the next part, I'll meet you over at the sewing machine and I'll stitch all of these up After that, we will, I'll show you what the process is for pressing all of these seams in order to get the intersecting seams to do that beautiful spin on the back side. Hi, welcome back. I have my machine all set up to stitch the blocks together for this little block that I'm working on. First though, let me tell you a little bit about how I have my machine set up. My machine set up. I have a dark gray thread to kind of match the tone that's going on with the block. My favorite thread to piece with is DMC machine embroidery thread. Let me show you a spool of it. This is my preferred thread to piece with. I absolutely love it. It is a cotton 50 weight thread. I do carry it in my shop along with the glue tips at purpledaisiesquilting.com. This thread is just wonderful to work with. It doesn't lint nearly as much as other threads that I've used. And I keep a collection in the shop of my most favorite piecing colors. So I have I have white, ecru, some different tans, and then this nice dark gray that I'm piecing with right now. So let's go ahead and talk about the needles. I have the machine embroidery needle by Schmetz. I have in here a 7511 to match the weight of the thread that I'm using. Sometimes I do use a 9014 for cotton 50 weight thread. I do that with Aurifil often because Aurifil seems to be feel thicker to me than my 50 weight DMC, and I get less linting from my Aurifil when I use a 9014 needle. I'm going to use a scant 1/4 inch, and I'm going to make sure I'm consistent with that for each block so they all turn out the same. If whatever you decide to do for your seam allowances, just make sure you stay consistent, and then your block will end up more accurate as you go along. So the key to being able to spin your seams is when you start sewing your blocks together, you need to start at a 1/4 inch down from the corner of one and end at a 1/4 inch from the next. So if you're doing a scant 1/4 inch, then it needs to be the same measurement as your seam allowance is going to be. So the scant 1/4 inch in and down, scant 1/4 inch in and down, or 1/4 inch, whichever seam allowance you are working with. But it needs to match. So you can eyeball it, you could mark it. Sometimes people prefer to mark a dot right there when they're just getting started until they can visualize where that dot would be. But each block has to be started down at a 1/4 inch and end down here at a 1/4 inch. And I do back stitch 2 stitches usually at each spot. Yes, you're correct that this makes for slower chain piecing, but my results at the end I'm much more happy with, so I don't mind taking that extra time to start at the 1/4 inch down and end and do that little bit of back stitching. So I'm going to start at that 1/4 inch mark. I'm going to just give it an eyeball, and then I drop my needle when I start to sew. It helps to control the tails back here so I don't get little nests of threads at the beginnings of my seams. So I'm just going to do 2 back stitches, and I am sewing with about a 1.8 stitch length, which is a great stitch length for piecing. It helps make a stronger seam and less likely to pop. Then stop at that 1/4 inch, back stitch 2, and then just move it forward for the next one. Back stitch 2. Oh, that didn't do 2, did it? Now when you stop to backstitch, you'll know your machine better than anyone else. And some machines will do an extra stitch either when you stop sewing or when you go to back stitch, you'll kind of go forward and then back. So just make sure you know what your machine does when you stop sewing and when you go to back stitch, so you can make the proper accommodations. Okay, and then the next one. Now this is pretty cool little trick here. I'm coming right down to that 1/4 inch and on a half square triangle, if you can see that. So this block has a half square triangle with it. Sorry, it's kind of bright. But my needle is going to land, I wish I could get it a little bit closer for you. But my needle is going to land when I get to it right on the seam. And that is actually the exact spot that you need it to be at when it stops sewing, to do that spun seam for that section. So if you have that half square triangle and can either start it up here or end it, it will land right on the seam, and you know that is that 1/4 inch spot to stop or to start sewing. Here, I'll pull it out so you can see what I mean. See how the seam I just sewn intersects or just stops right at that half square triangle seam right there. All right, we'll keep on going. And then here's an example of one where I drop my needle will touch the seam up here. So that's a nice guide as well. That's pretty helpful. Okay, and this is the last one for this part for that first seam. Okay, now what I like to do here is I trim off the one just before this, so this just keeps me from having to have a ton of thread tails. I'm going to clip all these apart, and then I'm just going to keep chain piecing rather than pulling them all out and having more of these long tails. So that's what I'm going to keep on doing. I'm going to finish these all up, and then I will be back with how to press each of the seams and show you which sides they need to be pressed to, and then assembling them to get those seams to spin. Hi, welcome back. I have all of the blocks sewn together in strips, and they are ready for pressing and nesting and then sewing together. I'm going to show you how to press your seams in order to get these beautiful spun seams on the back of this little block here. You can see how when you press the seams to the side and you have all of those intersections, it alleviates so much bulk on the front side of the quilt, and it just really makes it look beautiful. So what we have to do for that, and you might be able to see it from this little sample, is we actually have to press each seam in an alternating direction from the one previous to it. Normally in strips we would press all of them to one side and the next row all to the other side and then nest them. To spin a seam, you need to press each seam in an alternating direction. You can see this one goes to the left, this one goes to the right, and then the next one goes to the left. So after that it would go to the right. Then on the row next to it, they alternate as well, so that all the seams will nest and then spin after they are sewn together. In order to do that on these seams, I'm going to start up here at this block. I'm just going to kind of pull these down out of the way so you can see it better. So when I start pressing, I prefer to do this from the back just to get the initial press, and then I go to the front and fix it. Although you can really start either, but just make sure when you press, you kind of just gently coax that fabric into the direction that you want it to go. See, this one I'm kind of holding it in place and then folding it over, and since I'm right-handed, I like to press toward the right, so I will do that way. Then I know the next one is going to alternate this way, and this one's going to go this way, and that one's going to go that way. I'll show you on the back side what it looks like. On the back side, press 2, the right, this one's going to come, or sorry, that one's going to the left, the right, the left, the right, the left. You can give it a little steam if you'd like. A little starch never hurt anybody. I love starch for helping to stabilize my grains. You can see this row is all ready to piece. I have this one going toward the left, right, left, right, left. Or since if you're looking at it in the opposite direction, you might see this one going, oh, that's right. So I'm going to get the next one sewn or pressed, and I'm going to keep this here just to remind me which direction this one needs to go. So I know this one needs to go this way, to the right. This one needs to go to the left. This one needs to go to the right, to the left, and to the right. And then I'll flip it over just to make sure I didn't get a little fold in my seam, which would then shrink the block. So I like to make sure that all my seams are pressed right to where the thread is. Okay, that one's all ready to go. So I'll go ahead and get these all pressed in the same manner. So make sure, as you can see here, I'm getting ready to press this one. I don't want to press it the same direction as this one is. It needs to go the alternating direction, right, left, right, left. Check it on the front side just to make sure you didn't get any folds in your creases. And then I'm going to flip it over just to keep consistency here. All right, the next one. Right, left, right, left. Oh, when these get sewn together and they all spin so beautifully, you are going to just love it. Now, if you have a full quilt of blocks that have all been spun, or if you're doing a quilt that's just, say, layer cake pieces or something really simple, or you just have multiple blocks, you can do the same thing. Once you piece all of your blocks together individually, then each block can be pieced together in rows and have the seams pressed to the side just like this, alternating sides, and then you can spin the seams of each block within a whole quilt top. And if you send your quilt off to a long armor for quilting, they are going to love you for having your seams pressed so nicely. It makes their job so much easier. Oh, look at that. See, I just found a seam that I forgot to sew. I'm going to sew that up really quick and then finish this up, and then we'll sew them all together. All right, easy fix, didn't take too long. Make sure this is going the right direction, so then this gets pressed that way, and to the right, and then to the left. Give it a little steam. Set those seams and make sure I didn't get any folds. It's also a good time to make sure glue didn't accidentally seep through, and if you did, you just go do a little pull and it'll pop that glue, and then the glue will wash out. Alright, these are all ready to go. So the next step is to glue baste each of these seams together. And I do that in pretty much the same way I did the individual blocks. I'm going to turn these to the side. sure they're all going the way they should. Oh, see, that one was backwards. Gotta check that stuff before I sew them together. I've made those kinds of mistakes. All right. I'm actually going to turn them over. I think that'll be easier for my brain. Okay, so this one is going to get glue basted to this one. So right where these two are going to join, I'm going to draw a line of glue close to that selvage edge. Just go directly across those intersecting seams, dragging my strip with me. All right, and then we're going to lay this one on top and nest all the seams, and you'll feel when those seams all kind of nest and go in their proper places. I think this one actually goes here. My seams weren't nesting right. Oh yeah, that's much better. So, lesson learned, if your seams don't nest right, make sure you're trying to glue baste the right strips together, because those were laying on top of each other instead of nesting, and the rows were the same. All right, these are looking really good. They're nesting very nicely and behaving well. So go ahead and get them all in their proper spots. Oops, see that one, I did the wrong direction. So that's an easy fix, just press it the other way. Make sure everything lines up properly. Sometimes I worry of making mistakes when I make a video, but I think it's good that you see how easy things can be to fix, and that we all make mistakes. Just gotta correct it. All right, so that's all ready to sew. This one's all looking good. I'll glue baste all of these together, and then I will show you how we're going to sew them. See you in a minute. Hi, I wanted to show you a little bit of what your seams are going to look like as you're nesting them. If you can see here, if I can get close enough and it'll focus, you can see the seam when they lay together. Right there, how the seam is going to nest. When I lay those together as they're supposed to be, then it's going to look nested. There, and now it's focusing, sorry. So then you can see there that it's nested. So one seam bumps up against each other, they just kind of park each other right side by side. And each seam is going to have the same look as you go down your block and your strips. So each seam will be nested. If they are a little far apart, then you can make an adjustment, kind of ease it in or gently move it to be in the right spot. And then when it's glue basted, you just give it that little bit of heat setting, and then it will stay put for your sewing. Hope that helps you to see those nested seams all ready to sew, front and back, or one side and the other side. Well, I have my entire block glue basted together by strips, and everything is ready to sew. When we sew the strips together, from after having done these alternating seams, pressing them one direction and then the next, right, left, in order to nest, when we sew them together, we're just going to start at one end and go straight down to the other. We do not need to stop at any intersections. I do like to backstitch 1 or 2 stitches. Sometimes I forget, but usually I like to at the top here, just to help secure the block so that these seams don't unravel. So like I have before, I like to start with my needle down, and then I'm going to go ahead and just start sewing. And just sew each seam. Be careful when you come to this seam that this doesn't flip over, get pushed over by the foot. And also be careful that the one underneath doesn't get pushed over as you're going. I got caught there. There we go. I like to make sure, if you can see here very well, that as I sew over, I can see on some of the seams that I'm doing, the seam's going to go right over the intersection that I wanted it to. See right here, it just got caught up in my foot. I don't want it to do that, so I'll just fix that right up. And off the edge. And I'll do each of the next seams, and then we'll be ready to spin. Well, this block is all ready to press and spin each of the seams. Because we glue basted the seams right where the intersection is, it's going to be stuck together. So what we have to do in those intersections is just gently pull the glue apart, and see, you'll be able to get that seam to open up. Just right at the intersection, that's the only place. So if you grab on to the little wings here, the little ends of the seam allowance, and give it a little pull, kind of stick your fingers in there if you need to. You only need to do it a little bit, just so that they separate, just like that. So at each seam where we need it to spin, we're going to just separate those little ends of the seam allowance. And how you know the direction that you want it to spin is this. If this seam here is coming one direction, we want, like, say, clockwise and counterclockwise. So this one is coming down as if it were, looking at me, it looks clockwise. To you, it might look counterclockwise because I have the camera set like you're looking above me. So the next one is just going to kind of go in the next direction, and then this one's going to go up, which it does, and this one over. And when we do that, it makes that seam spin right in the middle. We're just going to give that a quick press, and then the next one's going to go the opposite direction, and we give that a press, and give it a little steam if you'd like. And we just keep on going, watching the directions that the seam's going, and you'll run into the parts that you have to just pull the glue apart a little bit, and that's shouldn't be much of a big deal at all. And then give it a little press and just move on down each seam of the block. Make sure they go in the opposite directions, and then each seam will spin. And what I love that it does is it creates like a miniature mirror of the 4 squares underneath. So like here is the little half square triangle of the green and gray, which is right here, green and gray. And here's a little teeny tiny half square triangle of this gray and orange. And then we have this corner of that orange and that corner of that green. So it gives like a little mirror image, which I think is really cute, kind of fun. So we'll keep pressing as we go around. And then each seam will be spun. So when this one gets pushed over, again, I'm just going to kind of pull it to get that glued part to come undone. And then just keep on going. And what you'll find is that these seams alternate in the same manner that the other ones did. So these seams here that of the rows joining alternate right, left, right, left. And once you get the hang of doing this, it can go, you'll get better at it, it'll get a little bit more efficient. I know it does take a bit longer than just pressing your seams all to one side and then all to the other side. But you decide what results you want to have for your projects, and then you'll find the techniques, seek out the techniques, and use the techniques that give you the results that you want to have. So pressing your seams to the side is very important for multiple reasons. The first reason is it makes your seams stronger. When you press your seams to the side, the strength of your seam is now relied on the strength of your fabric, not just the thread. When your seams are pressed open, the strength of your seam is only as strong as your thread, which with dense quilting, over time and wear and washing and use, you could risk having your seams pop. When you press your seams to the side, then your seams are stronger, they nest better together, they are easier to quilt, especially if you quilt on long arm or home machine, or if you ask and use the services of a long arm quilter. They will love you. It will make their job much easier getting your quilt quilted when your seams are pressed to the side, and especially when your seams are spun. Now, if you'll take a close look at the spinning of the seams and how it all looks, you'll notice that the bulk is very well distributed. A lot of the complaints I get as a teacher and a quilter is, well, I don't want to press my seams to the side because of the bulk. Well, as soon as you press them to the side and spin them, that bulk is alleviated. This is no different than if you had pressed your seams open and then had these intersecting open seams here. And in actuality, that causes more bulk and it causes you to lose strength in your seams. So keep those things in mind as you are working on your next project and as you decide whether or not you want to nest and spin your seams for projects that it will work for. Of course, there are going to be blocks that spinning and nesting your seams won't work with, but when I can, I do, and I just love the way that it looks. I love the results that I get, and it makes my quilting easier for me to do, and I don't worry so much about any seams popping. When you're finished with a block like this, you can give it a final steam or a final starching. I like to do that just to make sure it's all nice and flat. I'm going to starch it on one side, flip it on over, and just make sure any folds are taken care of and all my seams are pressed nice and tidy. And now this is all ready to head over to Sarah for her bee block. And I can't wait to see what she does with all of her Halloween blocks. Thank you so much for joining me. I really hope that this video helped a lot for you in your sewing and quilting journey. And please, if you have any questions, leave a comment in the video or on my blog at purpledaisiesquilting.com/blog. And I will hopefully see you real soon. Thanks so much.